Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Daled, and Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Reish Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn the fascinating halachas of Iruvei Chatzeros. We pick up today on the bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Reish Nun Amud Beis with Siman Shin Pei Beis Sif Vav. Our learning should be a schos for Achedu Beis Yisrael and Nesunim Batzara Ba'ashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam U'Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Alehem V'Yitziam Yitzara L'Rvacha Me'afelu L'Oira U'Mishibud L'Geula Hashta B'Gala B'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schos for Refuah Shalema for Achya Gadol Meshaber Ben Esther Fradel Yitzchak Ben Sian Ben Dusha Rivka Bashir Aleah Chavadasa Bas Rezel Serel Yeshua Levi ben Ahuva Malkachana and Yerucham ben Masha. They should all have a Refuah Shalema B'Seich Shar Chayli Yisrael. We're mispal that our learning should be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chal Makayim Shehem. Okay, so we're discussing the halachas that pertain to when you have an Eina Yehudi living together with Yisraelim. Cases where the Eina Yehudi asers on the Yisraelim, therefore the Yisraelim have to be maskir rishus from the Eina Yehudi. They have to, so to speak, rent from him his rishus in the chotzer. We've seen that this is not a true schirus. The words of the Mishnah Berurah, it's a schirus chalusha. In the words of the Gemara, it's a schirus re'ua. They both mean the same thing. It's a weak schirus. It's not a real schirus. It's a formality, it's a hecker, and therefore it's not considered mekach memkar. You don't need a shtar. There's other halachas that come into play. It's not a real schirus. Why do we have this schirus in the first place? In reality, we don't recognize the dira of the Eina Yehudi as a dira in the context of the halachas of Iruvei Chatzeros. Nevertheless, Chazal were dealing with a different issue. Chazal did not want Yisraelim living in a chotzer with an Eina Yehudi. They didn't want us listening to the Eina Yehudi music. They didn't want us smelling the Eina Yehudi's food. They didn't want us schmoozing with the Eina Yehudi about things that the Eina Yehudi likes to schmooze about. They didn't want us picking up the ideas and the concepts, the mores and the she'ifos of the Eina Yehudi. We say in Aleinu every day, Shaloi Sam Chalkenukem V'Garaleinu Kichal Hamoinam, and we want to keep it that way. We're not interested in chasing the same car leases and chasing the same home improvements, and certainly not lots of other horrible, nasty things. And therefore, they didn't want us living in a chutzner together with an Eina Yehudi. What did Chazal do? They made it inconvenient for us. How did they make it inconvenient? Oh, you want to make it a Iruvei Chatzeros? You have an Eina Yehudi in the chutzner? Now you're going to be maskir. You're going to have to go be maskir rishus. Now, one thing that I didn't mention up until now, every year since we started this Siman, I've wanted to mention it, is that Chazal realized that one of the problems with having to be maskir rishus from an Eina Yehudi, if you go back to the days of the Mishnah, the days of the Gemara, the days of the Shulchan Aruch, and interestingly enough, even now, you're dealing with Einam Yehudim who are suspicious, who are very often not well educated, and Rabbi Say, even the well-educated ones are not well educated. And very often they're superstitious. And one of the things that the Nachri is concerned with when you come to be maskir rishus from him is that there's some kind of heebie-jeebie stuff going on over here. They're worried about Maisei Kshafim. I don't know, what's this Yehudi trying to do to me? He's trying to put the evil eye on me. He's trying to put the whammy on me. I don't know, maskir rishus, renting my rights. And I don't know, there's something going on here. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I've seen this. I'll tell you another place where I saw it. Not only in the context of Iruvei Chatzeros, but in another area of Hilchas Eruv. And that is our Tzuras HaPesach, our posts and our strings. Or in the case of contemporary Eruvin, when we have the electrical wires and we put the lechis on the poles. I have seen on Facebook pages, I've seen on other areas of social media, where Einam Yehudim were conversing with each other, and they're talking about, what are those strings? What are they trying to do to us? What is this? Surrounding the area with strings and I'm cutting it down. I'm cutting it down. I don't know. And then somebody else says, "What are you cutting it down for?" This is all Einam Yehudim. What are you cutting it down for? What do you care? What do you care? No. There's something going on here. I don't know. They're doing something. They have a way. They understand things that we don't. And I don't know what kind of heebie-jeebie stuff is going on over here. I can't have it. So, yeah. Chazal made it inconvenient for you to go have to be masker rishus. You're going to try to be masker rishus. They're not going to be willing to be masker rishus to you because they're afraid of ma'aseh kshafim. Okay, now we're up to Sivav. You went ahead and you were masker rishus from the Ein Yehudi. You were masker the rishus from the Ein Yehudi. You ticked off that checkbox. Now you go make an Eruv Chatzeros, the other Yisraelim, make an Eruv Chatzeros, and they tick off that checkbox. How long does this masker rishus last? Do you have to be masker rishus every week? Says the Mechaber Sivav. Kol zman she'ena Yehudi chayzer boy, as long as the Ein Yehudi does not back away from his schirus, he rented out his rishus. As long as he doesn't come over to you and say, "I don't want to do it anymore," mayala schirus, the schirus goes in perpetuity. Va'afilu lizman meruba, even for 10 years. So you went over to the Ein Yehudi and you were successfully masker rishus from the Ein Yehudi, and you did not mention a time period. Listen, I need to rent your rights to the chutzner. Here's a quarter. The guy says, "Sure, no problem, whatever you need." Okay, 10 years, 20 years, it's fine. As long as he doesn't come back to you and say, "I'm backing out." Remember that deal we made 5 years ago? You gave it a quarter. I rented you the rishus to the chutzner. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm backing out. If he backs out, now it's over. He backed out. You want to redo it, you're going to have to be masker rishus again. Now the Ramah adds a very important piece of information. However, the Ramah says, he cannot back out until he returns the money. Now we're going to have to see the fine points of that. So right now, we have over here between the Mechaber and the Ramah, we have two things. One, the Mechaber says, you were masker rishus, you rented the rishus from him, it works in perpetuity. You didn't make a zman. You didn't say you're doing it for a year. You didn't say I'm doing it for a week. You didn't say a zman. You did it stam. I'm being masker rishus from you. Well, then it works forever until he backs out. Says the Ramah, he wants to back out? He's got to return the money if he wants to back out. What case is the Ramah talking about? Is the Ramah also talking a case where you were masker rishus stam? So you were masker rishus. 10 years later, he says, I want to back out. He can't back out unless he gives back the quarter? For 10 years, you had his rishus in the chutzner. He can't back out unless he gives back the quarter? Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah on the bottom of Reish Nun Amud Beis, Ois Kanu Chav Gimel. Kol zman she'eina nochri, mayri shescharoi mimenu b'stam. The Mechaber is definitely talking about a case where you rented the rishus from the Ein Yehudi stam. No time period was mentioned. V'loi perishum zman. Di schar l'zman yadua. If you did it for a fixed time period. If you went to the Ein Yehudi, you said, I want to rent it out for 4 Shabbos. Kishavar Azman, when those 4 Shabbos are over, tzarich liskar shenis b'chol inyan. Then certainly you have to make a new deal. The deal that you made with the Ein Yehudi was for 4 weeks. Okay, the 4 weeks are up, you got to make a new deal. Kimavur b'siv sha'achazeh. We're going to see that in Siv Zayin. V'koidim sha'avar azman. Now, let's say you made the deal for 4 weeks. Okay, on week 2, the Ein Yehudi says he wants to back out. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'koidim sha'avar azman. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you made a zman, you set a zman for 4 weeks, and now the Ein Yehudi wants to back out on week 2, he can't. B'chol inyan, not even if he wants to give back the money, he can't. A deal is a deal. We made a deal for 4 weeks. You can't back out. For 4 weeks, I'm locked in. Okay. And if you did it stam, then it lasts in perpetuity, 10 years, 20 years. Since no time period was set on the deal, it works until such time as the Ein Yehudi specifically backs out of the deal. But by the same token, says the Mishnah Berurah, if you didn't set a zman, so let's just get this straight. If you didn't set a zman, says the Mechaber, it works in perpetuity until he backs out. So that's the kula, so to speak. That's the good side of this. You didn't set a zman, it'll last forever, unless he backs out. On the other hand, if you didn't set a zman, he could back out after 1 week, right? Because you didn't set a zman. And then he'll aser on you for the next Shabbos. Because since you made the deal bestam and you didn't set a time period, the any Yehudi could say to him, I only meant for 1 week. You came to me, you said you have a problem for Shabbos. I made you the deal for Shabbos. Now I'm done. Comes to you Sunday. Remember that quarter that you gave me? I'm backing out of it now. Now you would have to make a new one for the next Shabbos. Now the Ramah said that the Eini Yehudi cannot back out unless he returns the money. Okay, what case is the Ramah dealing with? Says the Mishnah Berurah, what the Ramah wants to say is, the Masha Amarnu, this that we're saying, the Akar Shabbos Rishona, Yochala Akum Lachzar, we just said that if you didn't set a time period, the Eini Yehudi could back out after 1 week, right? You said, I need to be Masker Rishos, you did it stam, you didn't set a time period. Okay, for 1 week, you're locked in. But after Shabbos, if the Eini Yehudi wants to back out, he can. He says, I only meant for 1 week, he can back out. On that, says the Ramah, Hainu Dafko Kishamachzer Adomim. Yeah, but he has to give the money back. Interesting. Dem loikain yakal al Yisrael loimerloi anoichi kivanti liskar mimcha kam shabbosais valdas kein nosati lecha demeaschirus. If a time period wasn't set, so you're right, the Eini Yehudi could back out after 1 week, but he has to give back the money. Why? Because the Yisrael will say, you're right, we didn't set a time period, but we had different expectations. My expectation was that it should work for a year. That's my expectation. Why do you have that expectation? I don't know. But that was my expectation. My expectation was it should last for a year. You, Tony, had a different expectation. Fine, you could back out, but give me my quarterback. Now, how are you going to enforce that? I don't know. But give me my quarterback. No, I don't want to give you your quarterback. Oh, well then, we don't recognize, I think that's the point. The point isn't that you have the right to take the quarterback. That's not the point. The point is, in Hilchas Rivi Chatzeres, it's very nice he's saying that he wants to back out, but he can only back out if he gives the quarterback. If he says, I'm not backing out, I'm not giving you your quarter, then the schirus remains in place. Because the Yid could say, listen, my expectation was a quarter for a year. That was my expectation. And you took the quarter. A deal is a deal. You want to give back the money and back out? Fine, give back the money. You didn't give back the money. I'm not recognizing that you backed out. The Yid said, my expectation was that this would work for many Shabbos. That's why I gave you the quarter. And now the Chazal are makel, and the Chazal say that, yeah, Tony said he wants to back out, but we don't have to recognize his backing out because he didn't give back the money. He gives back the money, then you're stuck. You got to be maskerishus again. He doesn't give back the money. I don't care. He could stand on his head, spit wooden nickels, and he says, I'm backed out. I backed out. We don't recognize it because he didn't give the quarterback, and that's a coolant that the Chachamim made, that the guy cannot aser on you in that case. So now, it's very interesting, right? Let's pause here for a second, and let's just analyze this. So what do we have right now? You made the deal with the Eini Yehudi Stam. It works in perpetuity unless he comes and he says that he's backing out. All right. So he has to back out beferish. Says the Ramah, yeah, he has to back out beferish. Not only he has to back out beferish, he has to give the money back. If he doesn't give the money back, we don't recognize it that he backed out. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'harbe cholkem al zeh. Many disagree with this Ramah. And you could understand why. According to them, the other sheets say, hey, hold it. If you didn't set a time period, and the guy comes after one Shabbos and he says, I want to back out, he could back out, And you can't say, well, my expectation was my quota should work for 10 years. No, he wants to back out. He can back out. Since you didn't set a time period, the any Yehudi could say, what kind of business? We made a deal. You told me you had a Shabbos problem. I said, okay, that was for one Shabbos, and now I want to back out. Oh, I have to give you your money back? Why? You had one Shabbos. Why do I have to give you your money back? And therefore, if Tony says he wants to back out, it's backed out, and you would have to make a new schirus. Moving along to Sif Zayin, second line down, Reish Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, in the middle of the line. If you made the schirus and you did set a time period, when the time period is over, you made the deal with Tony for a year. Well, then when the calendar year is up, you need to re-up the deal. You need to go back to him. See, it sounds pretty poshut. Not only that, you have to make a new Eruv Chatzeres. In other words, on January 1st, you went to the Ein Yehudi, and you had a successful conversation with him, and you were maskir rishus. Okay? Check. Now you went to the other Yisraelim in the Chatzar, and you said, Mazel Tov, we could make it a Eruv Chatzeres. I was successfully maskir rishus from the Ein Yehudi, now we can make it a Eruv Chatzeres. So you made it a Eruv Chatzeres. You're good for a calendar year. When the calendar year is up, the Bittul Rishus is over. Once the Bittul Rishus is over, it brings down the Erev. Davar Pashut, it brings down the Erev because now the Goy asers on the Yisraelim. So now there's no more Erev. There's no more Erev Chatzeros. So now you need to re-up being Maskir Rishus. You got to go back to be Maskir Rishus again. And you have to make a new Erev. Let's see it inside. Im Sachre Me'en Yehudi Lizman Yodua. You made the schirus for a fixed time period. When that time period is over, you got to go ahead and you got to re-up and you got to do a new schirus. And you have to make a new Eruv Chatzeres as well. We're not going to say that, okay, the schirus rishus from the Ein Yehudi lapsed, so right now, he's answering on you. You'll re-up the schirus rishus, and the old Erev is chayzer v'neir. It reawakens. Why do I have to make a new Erev? No, the Erev was gone. The Erev was gone. You need to make a new Erev. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chavav. L'kishayikla Zman Tzarich. When the Zman is over, you got to re-up. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Afilu im ein ha'akum chayzer boy. This is true, even though the guy did not come and say, okay, the year is up, I want to back out. You did it for a year. You did it for 2026. At the end of 2026, it's over. You need a new schirus. Now, you go to the Ein Yehudi. The Ein Yehudi never said, hey, 2026 is over. Remember, our deal is over. You got to re-up. He never said that. Doesn't matter. It's over anyway, because he only did it to 2026. Because the original schirus automatically lapses at the end of the time period. Upashut, and it's simple to understand, says the Mishnah Berurah. Even if the Ein Yehudi says, you know what, the deal that we made last year, January 1st, don't worry about it. We'll continue it running, right? Still, it's very nice that Tony says, I'm willing to re-up the deal, but you got to re-up the deal. You got to go give him another quarter or another dollar or whatever it was, and you have to do a new schirus. So it's not just that Tony could say, you'll go over to Tony and say, you remember that deal I made with you last year for 2026, renting the rights of the car? Yeah, don't worry about it. Just continue it. No, you got to do a new schirus. Kasavataz the Taz writes, this is a drop complex. Kasavataz the Taz writes, Im Sachar Me'akum, you go ahead and you do a schirus from Tony. Okay. Umeis, Tony dies. V'yaniach Yairish, and he leaves over next of kin, Tony Jr., who inherits from him. Ein moyel mashasachrei min hamoirish. The schirus that you did from Tony Sr. is not effective. Da'oz nispatel koyach haschirus, because once Tony Sr. died, the schirus is over. And the Taz gives like a rationale for this. The Taz says as follows. Taha, afilu b'chayev motzi l'mahader bey. Says the Taz, the rationale for this is because look, even when Tony was alive, Tony had the right to back out of the deal. Now, right away, we have to put this Taz against the backdrop of everything we've learned already before today, right? But says the Taz, right? I would just say what the Taz says. Taz says, you were masker rishus from Tony Sr. Tony Sr. died, next of kin, Tony Jr. Says, Taz, the schiras rishus that you did from Tony Sr. is over. It's over and done with. Tony Sr. died. You got to do a new schiras from Tony Jr. Says the Taz, why? Because look, even when Tony Sr. was alive, if Tony Sr. wanted to back out, he could have backed out, right? He didn't, Baruch Hashem. But now he died. Ein lecha backing out gedola mizu. He's dead, right? So he always had the power to back out. Now that he died, that constitutes backing out. You don't get a bigger form of backing out than dying. That's what the Taz says. Ad kan l'shoina. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, let's analyze this. Let's unpack this. V'zeu l'shitasei le'el shekosa b'sivav. The Taz is saying this against the Taz's own opinion that the Taz says earlier in this Siman, which is what? Da'afilu b'saich zman yochel lachzor. The Taz holds that if you make a deal with Tony for 2026, Tony could back out in February. It's very nice that you made the deal for a year. Guess what? It's not an enforceable lease. Tony could back out whenever he wants. He could back out even in February. That's the Taz's opinion. But according to the conclusion of the other Achronim, who do not rule like this Taz, they hold the B'sach HaZman eino yochel lachzor b'shum inyan. They hold like what we said in the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Chav Gimel earlier. We said that if you set a Zman, the guy could never back out, even if he gives you your money back. During the Zman, we don't recognize his ability to back out. During the Zman, he can't back out. So the other Achronim argue with this Taz. So then the Taz's rationale falls away. In Cain, according to our psak, I feel mace, even if Tony Sr. dies during the time period, you set a time period for 2026, according to us, Tony Sr. can't back out in 2026. So if he dies in the middle of 2026, that also doesn't constitute backing out, and the schiras still rolls. Even though Tony Jr. is saying, no. I don't care what Tony Jr. says. I made a deal with Tony Sr., and the deal that I made with Tony Sr. is binding for the entire time period that we set. Even though Tony Jr. is yelling, it doesn't matter. So says the El Yerabba and other Achronim as well. But if the deal that you made with Tony Sr. was stam, no set time period, then everybody agrees that Tony Sr. could back out, right? So then, if he dies, it's over. Mistabed in the spatel, memela schiras, u'kedivrei ataz. And now, let's say Tony Sr. dies. Tony Jr. moves in. Tony Jr. says, look, my father left me a note, some kind of renting out the rights in the chutzah. Yeah, don't worry about it. You know, I honor my father's word. Whatever my father said, it keeps on rolling. Don't worry about it. Mistabed l'lemahani, achi yasi v'iskem imenu. It doesn't work unless you do a new schiras rishus with Tony Jr. The additional chiddush that we saw over here is that once the schiras rishus from the Ein Yehudi is bottle, it brings down the Erev. Now the Yisraelim have to be masker rishus from the Ein Yehudi again, and then they have to make a new Erev. The old Erev doesn't kick back in. V'tzarch lachzor la'arev, says the Mishnah Berurah, once the schiras from the Nachri is bottle, memela nispatal la'erev. Now the Erev is also bottle. The ein Erev moil b'makamakum. Right? Again, you just have to understand the lumdus of this. Reuben and Shimon joined in a joint to Reuven Chatzeros, but their joint to Reuven Chatzeros only works when they have Tony living in their chatzer, if they're masker rishus from Tony. So if the schiras rishus from Tony is bottle because the time period is over and the schiras lapsed, well, now there's no Erev. What do you mean there's no Erev? Because the Erev is not effective. The Erev can't work without schiras rishus from Tony. So in that case, it's bottle. We don't say, okay, you'll be masker rishus again, and the Erev will be chayzer and Erev. It reawakens. No such thing. Once the Erev is bottled, it's bottled. You got to make a new Erev. Let's move on to Sif Ches, says the Mechaber. 4 lines off the top. If you rented out, you did a schirus from the Eni Yehudi for a fixed time period. Now, in the middle of that time period, Hisker Eni Yehudi derase lacher. Tony rents out his house to a different Eni Yehudi. So, again, what happened here? Reuben and Shimon, Tony. Reuben and Shimon did all the right things. They were masker rishus from Tony. They made an Eruv Chatzeris. Everything is fine. They did it for 2026. No problem. January, February, March, April, May, June. June, they see moving trucks in Tony's driveway. They go over to Tony, what's going on? He says, I'm going to Aruba for the summer. And don't worry, you'll still have a neighbor. I rented out my house to Vinny. So Vinny is going to be here for the summer. I'm going to Aruba. Vinny is going to be here for the summer. We were masker rishus from Tony. We weren't masker rishus from Vinny. What do we do now? Says the Mechaber, Dai b'schiris harishin. Don't worry about it. The schiris that you did from Tony is still binding. You don't have to worry about Vinny. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chav Ches. Lizman yedua miloshen zeh mashma. It's directly implied from the language of the Mechaber that the Mechaber's halacha here is only true if the deal with Tony was for a set time period. If the deal was for 2026, then even if Tony rents out to Vinny in 2026, you're still covered by the deal that you made with Tony. Because the deal that you made with Tony was for the entire 2026. Now Tony rented out to Vinny, I don't care. I have a deal for 2026. But if you didn't do it for Zman Yadua, if you did it stam, you never set a time period, and then Tony leaves, now you got a problem. Then you got to deal with Vinny, because what's your argument? Well, I made a deal for 2026. No, you didn't. You made a deal with Tony. As long as Tony is here, the deal is valid. Tony leaves, Vinny moves in, you got to deal with a new Eni Yehudi. Now you got to go be masker rishus from Vinny. You made the deal for 2026, and now in June of 2026, Tony rented out to Vinny. Doesn't matter. Your deal with Tony is binding. Explains the Mishnah Berurah the Lumdus. First he says, this is not only, you see, you might be tempted to say, all right, you made the deal with Tony. Tony rented out to Vinny. Tony still owns the house. Tony still owns the house. So the deal I made with Tony is still binding. How about if Tony doesn't own the house? How about if he came out in June and the moving truck is there and Tony says, time for me to move on. I'm going to a good red state. I'm moving down to Florida. I've had it with these blue states. I'm moving down to Florida, and I don't know, Vinny's got some different ideas. You know, he's got business involvements up here in the East Coast. He's not ready to move down south. So Vinny is moving in. Well, in that case, you might very well think, now what's my argument to keep the deal that I had with Tony? Right? I mean, Tony is gone. He sold the house. Right? Now, l'chayra, I got to deal with Vinny. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Even though Tony sold to Vinny, you could still rely on your deal with Tony for the rest of 2026. Fatam, what's the rationale for this? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tischiris liyuma nami mimkarhu. Renting out is a form of mechira. We don't look at it that Tony still owns the house. Not really. Not really. Guess what? For June, July, and August, Vinny owns the house. And yet, we see that this halacha works. The argument over here is not that when Tony rents out to Vinny, you're protected by the deal that you made with Tony because Vinny's not really the owner. It's not the argument. The argument is, I made a deal with Tony. I rented out from him his rights in the Rishus for 2026. It's very nice that he rented out his house to Vinny. He can't rent out what he doesn't own. Right? It's like doing a title search when you buy a house. You have to make sure that the guy who's selling the house to you really owns the house. If he doesn't really own the house, he can't sell you the house. So too over here. Very nice Tony rented out the house to Vinny. There's an aspect of the ownership that he cannot rent out. He can't rent out to Vinny the rights in the chutzner because he doesn't have them. He rented those out to us. So too, he can't sell them to Vinny. So for 2026, you are covered. V'yesh machmirin b'machar. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, nish tazay pushit. You take a look at the Rebbe Kiva Eger, you take a look at the Pri Megadim. There are those who disagree with this. And they say, Tony sold, he's out of the picture. You're going to have to deal with the new owner. Let's do sif tests. Says the Mechaber, Chamisha Adarim b'chotzer. You have a chotzer. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan. You have 5 Yidden in the chotzer. Tony, 5 Yidden, 1 Ein Yehudi. The Ein Yehudi asers on the 5 Yidden until the 5 Yidden are masker rishus from the Ein Yehudi. How does that work? Does each one, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, they all have to go to Tony and each one has to give Tony a quarter? Says the Mechaber, no. Chamisha Adarim b'chotzer. You have 5 Yidden living in a chotzer. Not Badafka 5. Echad soicher me'ein Yehudi b'shvil kulam. One person could do the deal for all of them. Reuven, Levi. One of them will go to Tony, make the deal with Tony. That covers everybody. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois kat lamid b'shvil kulam. Hainu, this means she'ein tzar kol echad ve'echad liskar mimenu. It's not that each one who lives in the chasser has to do a separate schirus elekevich asachar echad mehen. Once one of them does it, memelo hutru kulan, they all become mutter. Thank you for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu should send Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnasa, Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the BS called Tzedek. B'mher v'yameinu amen. Be well.